When we consider the microscopic anatomy of bones, there are some really important cells that we need to think about. So, first of all, there are stem cells, which are also called osteoprogenitor cells. These are mitotically active stem cells, both in the periosteum as well as the endosteum. And when stimulated, they differentiate into osteoblasts or bone lining cells. So, osteoblasts are the cells that you can see here on the right of your slide. They differentiate from the osteoprogenitor cells. And osteoblasts are very important cells that we'll be considering. First of all, they are responsible for what is called bone deposition. And this essentially means that they are responsible for the deposit of calcium minerals. So, because of that, they are responsible for bone growth. And within osteoblasts, the osteoid is made up of collagen and calcium binding proteins. And collagen is almost 90% of the bone protein. So these osteoblasts are actively mitotic. Two other cells to consider are the mature bone cells, which are osteocytes. Remember, when they end with cyte, C-Y-T-E, that means they are mature bone cells. So they are responsible for maintaining the bone matrix. They respond to mechanical stimuli, like increased force on bone, and they communicate information to both osteoblasts and osteoclasts, which we're going to look at next. So the osteoclasts, they're actually derived from a hematopoietic stem cell within the bone marrow that becomes a macrophage. And as you learned back in the cell chapter, you learned about phagocytes, and the word phage in Greek means to eat. So they literally are bacteria eaters. And in A and P2, you'll learn a lot about them in the immune system. So they are giant multinucleate cells that function in bone resorption, which is the breakdown of bone. So again, the two important functions that it's going to be important for you to know for this chapter is, first of all, that bone deposition, which we looked at on the last slide, is the function of osteoblasts. Kind of the opposite cell is the one that's going to be responsible for bone resorption. And bone resorption is also basically the same thing as bone destruction. So these osteoclasts, which are kind of like macrophages, are literally going to be engulfing the matrix of the bone and breaking it down so then the calcium minerals can then be released into the bloodstream. So later in the semester, we'll be talking about the hormonal control of that. So let's compare the different types of bone cells. So we've already looked at the osteoblast. It's the matrix synthesizing cell responsible for bone growth. And remember, that is bone deposition. Very important to remember. Some of these osteoblasts are going to become osteocytes, which are mature bone cells. And at this point, they are surrounded by a lacuna. So that's the cavity, remember, that they are located in. These extensions for the osteocytes that you see are what are located in very small canals called canaliculi, which we will be talking about coming up. Then there are the osteoclasts, the macrophage-looking cells, and they are responsible for bone resorption, which is also referred to as bone destruction. Continuing with the microscopic anatomy of the bone, within compact bone, we have what's called a haversian system. So it's very important for you to remember that the osteon is the structural unit of compact bone. Consists of these long cylinders that run parallel to the long axis of the bone, up and down. And an osteon cylinder consists of several rings of bone matrix called lamellae, or we could say lamellar rings. This is the lamellae, so each one would be called a lamella. The osteon has a central canal in the very middle of it, which is also called a haversian canal. And the lamellae contain these collagen fibers that run in different directions. And what this does is it creates the ability to withstand twisting forces. So it's oftentimes considered a twister resistor, which explains how bone, especially compact bone, can be so incredibly strong. It withstands stress and resists twisting. And then bone salts are found between those collagen fibers. So when we look at compact bone now, we're going to look at it from a different view. And again, compact bone is also called lamellar bone. The way I want you to kind of imagine it is if we are looking at a dartboard. So I am going to draw a circle. And within that dartboard, we have all of these different rings here that we're going to see. And in the middle, we have the bullseye. The bullseye is going to be the central or the haversian canal. Each of these rings, so for example, if I highlight the outermost ring, it doesn't matter which one, all of these rings are going to be referred to as lamella, or lamellae for plural. And then between each of the lamella are these little cavities, which you all should know by now are lacuna. And the osteocyte is the mature bone cell, which is going to be located in the lacuna. So remember that the osteoblasts can develop into osteocytes. So that's basically one osteon that's shown as that dartboard. So the canals, there are canals, large ones, and then small canals called canaliculi. And these canaliculi are extensions essentially from the osteocyte. So what we would see if we zoom back in on this, these little extensions at the microscopic level, almost looks like the arms of a spider. Those are going to be the canaliculi. So we've seen the central or the haversian canal. It has blood vessels and nerve fibers. Then there are perforating or Volkmann's canals, which occur at right angles to the central canal. And then the other canals are the canaliculi. And the canaliculi are hair-like canals, connect each lacunae to each other. And the lacuna is the small cavity with the osteocyte. And those osteoblasts, again, become osteocytes after that.